In the Bible, Jesus says that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And while the etymology of the root word light in Hebrew does not necessarily mean light as in the sun, it just simply means that it is the load that is lightened, right? It's a not as heavy of a load. But the thing is that sometimes I think that that burden of light could be translated into the metaphor slash parable that it can be very challenging to be awakened in this world and to simply be detached from outcomes altogether. And something that I've noticed recently is that I've had to go to God for quite a bit of things in regard to just letting him handle everything that's heavy right now. And that's all that we can really do sometimes, all that we can really do is to just let God carry that which is heavy for us. And that's why he says, his burden is light and his yoke is easy. But at the same time, simultaneously, in a sense, there is this burden of knowledge that I often feel. And there's this amount of people that truly don't really fully fathom the weight of their own words. Like they don't have the authority or the experience or the knowledge to be speaking about what they're speaking about. And I'm well aware that I am a novice in multiple areas of life. And I genuinely think that that's what makes me spiritually attractive is I know what I am capable of and I know what I'm not capable of. And I'm simply realistic when it comes to my goals and senses of priorities, etc. I'm not aiming to be something I'm not. I'm not emotionally attached to any kind of ideology or framework. However, I am capable of operating at a high altitude in which I can look at these different perspectives from different perspectives. And it wasn't until the last few years that I realized just how valuable of a gift that was, but also how much of a curse that was too. And in some sense, it's a gift because, well, you can be very open-minded about a variety of different things. And while it can be a curse is that, well, you're open-minded about a lot of different things. So in many ways, to be able to be spiritual attractive as a person, you simply have to be comfortable in your own skin. You have to be calm on the outside and calm on the inside. And I found that it is very difficult for some people to approach problems without being emotionally attached to ideologies or frameworks. And it's not to say that there's a wrong place for this kind of framework or mindset. And there is something inherently noble when it comes to wanting to live life from a righteous place, of course. And I think that we ought to strive for righteousness in all ways possible. However, I'm also very aware of the Machiavellian system in which the world doesn't really operate in that way. It's only the spiritual domain that operates that way. And we who are spiritually attractive, and when I say that, I don't mean just attractive as far as in regard to just like romantic attraction. I don't mean it just like that. I mean attractive as far as you're attracting what's meant for you in some ways, right? And the thing is that sometimes we just have to pick ourselves up and move forward accordingly. And that will make you spiritually attractive when you're calm in your own skin, because that's really what the definition of confidence is. You're calm on the outside and you're calm on the inside. And if you can be calm on the outside and calm on the inside, there's going to be little that could ever deter you from actually realizing your potential and fulfilling your potential. And I think this is what makes spiritually attractive people different, is that they don't try to be attached to outcomes. They don't try to be attached to certain proclivities in which they will ostracize their own sense of their abilities for the sake of being perceived or perceiving themselves to be a certain way. Because again, I mentioned this in a recent video where not all vices are sin, but all sins are vices. Okay, so you got to be able to maneuver that. And something in regard to women that I've thought a lot about recently is the t-shirt metaphor. Okay, this is the t-shirt effect. It's like, well, I want a plain white t-shirt. And the woman, usually women are like this. Women will say, well, but don't you want the long sleeve t-shirt with graphics on it? And I say, no, I don't want that. I want the white t-shirt. I want the plain white t-shirt. And they say, well, no, I think you want the graphics with the long sleeve. And I said, no, I don't want the graphics with the long sleeve. I want the white tee. I want the plain white t-shirt. That's all that I want. And sometimes with people can be like this too, where you know what you want, and that makes you spiritually attractive, but sometimes you're going to attract energies in which people try to associate themselves with you in the sense that they can hope to convert you into a specific frame of mind rather than actually communicating. It's almost as if sometimes I feel as though a lot of these people aren't even like there. You know, like I don't feel like I'm talking to a person. I feel like I'm talking to a network. And in a way, I suppose people are networks to some degree. But I'm thinking about examples from in my physical community, you know, where I'm speaking to people and it seems like the same spirit is occupying them. It's like the same spirit is occupying them, and they see my authenticity, they see my realness, and it upsets their demons. And it's almost like they have this perception of me based on the network, the metaphysical network that they're operating from. Like they're coming from a place of not abundance and not really lack either, but it's just a different place. I'm not quite sure how to formulate it, because as I'm speaking through it, I'm articulating it to myself as much as I am to you right now, because I'm stream of consciousness trying to understand what exactly, and flow of consciousness, what exactly this is. Because what I think that it is, it's the ineptitude to perceive life through your own eyes. They cannot see life through their own eyes. They're seeing life through the eyes of a network. And although they all see this authenticity just brewing and emanating from you, they also want to control it, because again, they're seeing reality through a network. They're seeing reality from an emotional place, because that's what the ideology does. The ideology paints a lens of emotion around their framework in which they view the world. So they think that they're on the outside looking in, and meanwhile, people like us who are spiritually attractive, we're seeing the world from the inside out. We know that we're seeing the world from the inside out. They think that they're seeing the world from the outside in. And that's just not how it works. And I've noticed that a lot of people will, this is something else I've been thinking about recently. It's like, if you don't act in the way that they think you're supposed to act in certain situations, then that means that you're a bad person. And it's like, well, could be, maybe, right? Maybe. But ultimately, we're not the judge. Like, for example, I saw this last night, and then somebody in the Regal Change Academy posted about it this morning. And Lily Phillips, who is a Bonely Cans woman who's slept with like over 1,000 men and whatnot, she's converted to Christianity, right? She's converted to Christianity. She got baptized and everything. And my sense is If she's really baptized, then why is the baptizer in his face fuzzed out, at least in the video that I saw? And number two, if it's real, this is not a good look for Christianity. And this is not, well, it's a real video, but it's a fake, grift, right? It's not a good look for Christianity either way, because we just accept whores. We just accept hoes and whores, and oh yeah, anything can be forgiven, right? And it's like, yeah, okay, maybe Jesus Christ can forgive you, because I know he can. I don't doubt in my mind that anybody can be saved by Jesus Christ. I don't doubt that at all. What I doubt is the genuineness behind these people's lenses of mind. And this is what I call a PIM, right? I talk about this in my book. This is where, what kind of portrayal in mind are you having? This is a PIM. So how do you perceive life? How do you live in accordance to what is good and true, while also not letting the BS blind you from your own ideological lens and emotional lens of framework that you're working with? Because you might be attached to outcomes without even realizing it. Like Lily Phillips, I don't think she's actually converting. Maybe she is, right? Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, actually. I hope I'm wrong in this case, but I don't think she is. I think this is another day, another grifter, and another woman who wants to be forgiven for all the consequences. She just wants to relinquish all the consequences because, well, Jesus forgives, right? And it's like, this world is just getting so wicked. It's just so wicked, it's so bad. And it makes it really challenging to trust anybody. It makes it really challenging to want to build with people, because you never really know where they stand. I've never had more faith in humanity and yet less trust simultaneously. I've never been so optimistic and yet so distrustful of anybody and everybody. It's absolutely insane. And yet, I don't think that this is a product merely of our modern society. I think that you can think about it. I don't know why I just had like an image in my mind as I was speaking about this. I saw like a protractor moving its way around the earth. And I'm not quite sure what that means exactly. That's never really, because I'm thinking about the protractor as a unit of measurement of some kind, right? And what does the protractor do? Well, the protractor does certain things to measure, and like circles and such as well. So there's a circumference, there's a circle of life around the world. People are being weighed and measured. That's what it is. People are being weighed and measured in a way that we don't even recognize in the day-to-day life, because the air, has anybody else felt like since the new year, quote unquote, people say, oh, happy new year, and that's great. Yeah, it's like, yeah, happy new year, sure. To me, it's just another day. And yet for some reason, as soon as this new year started, like something felt off. Something felt very off. The whole energy for the past few years, really since the plandemic and the scamdemic, has just felt off. Nothing has been the same since the scamdemic. Nothing has been the same at all. And I genuinely think that it's time to be, as spiritually attractive people, we have to be more aware of what's actually happening. We have to be aware of the transitions of the world, because if we're not aware of the transitions of the world, we will lose, and we will lose hard for no reason. And I think that that's something we really have to be mindful of. And it's not to say that we can't take precautions, or that we can't see reality for the way that we want to see it, but at the same time, we have to see reality for what it is. And I think that that's another thing that makes people spiritually attractive is, I don't know. I had a very strange experience at the gym this morning as well, like it's interesting because the gym is always a very interesting place. I really love the gym in many ways because I don't know, it's like it's a ritual, right? It's a ritual of some kind, and it's a way of which I can actually be my most masculine version of myself. And yet today, I don't know, it felt like the men were just so simpy. They were just so simpy. And 2 nights ago, I had a dream of all these perceived godly men betraying the real godly men. And I didn't exactly know what that meant. And in the dream, it was very cinematic. And we were all like superheroes. Like all the godly men were superheroes, but we were real superheroes. But everybody else that was pretending to be a godly man was a superhero, but he wasn't. It was kind of like, have you ever seen The Incredibles? Remember Syndrome? Is it Syndrome or Syndrome or whatever? The guy with the big S on it is just kind of ugly and weird, but with the big weird hair. And the ginger dude. Yeah, like he wanted to be the sidekick for Mr. Incredible when he was young, and then Mr. Incredible said, "No, I work alone." And ever since then, he had like this revenge set out, right? And that's what he ended up doing. It's kind of like the godly men who are actually godly are the real superheroes, and the spiritual celebrities and the spiritually attractive people. And all these fake godly men are the superheroes. They are the heroes that aren't actually heroes. It's like in Spider-Man as well, with Maestro or Mysterio or whatever his name is, where they conjure up the problems and the projections. Like this is what I mean, right? Because I was trying to think about this dream. And I was like, what exactly is this dream trying to tell me, Because it seems like what the dream was trying to express to me was that there's a time in the near future. It didn't really seem like it was that far away in the dream, but it was very collective consciousness level. It wasn't exactly me in the dream. I was more like watching a series of things play out. And so all these godly men who were the real superheroes, who have achieved godlike mastery, they were on the same team. And then these godly men who were false godly men, they were subtly betraying these godly men for the sake of women, for the sake of power and prestige. It was all these fake things and fake glories, and it was all fake. And they didn't know it was fake, but that's what they were fighting for. It was like fake jewels and fake gold and fake crowns and all this stuff. And it wasn't real. It wasn't actually real. But the dream, it felt like what the expression of it was is that the godly men need to be very cautious of who they trust and who they actually see, because the more that you level up in life, the more people are going to try to come after you. Make no mistake about it. They will try to come after you, especially like, okay, if you're a targeted individual, right? This is where if you've genuinely felt like you've felt things or seen things where you feel as though you're being stalked by like the government or, gang stalking with people, like a group of narcissists, or like a narcissist and they're flying monkeys or whatever. And this is one thing that I've always been turned off by a lot of people online. People online in the YouTube space, the X space, etc. They have these like communities that turn into a cult. And they don't realize that it's turned into a cult, because if you don't operate within the framework, it's not that you're ostracized, it's just that you're not taken seriously. And one thing that I really do like about the Regal Change Academy, for example, is I do aim to treat it as a university and church replacement option. I don't try to suppress any type of information. I allow people to do what they want to do. You know, because a university, ideally, this was one of my biggest pet peeves that I had when I was actually at the university, was I was trying to be in what I thought was the devil's advocate. But in reality, I was actually just, I was actually starting to see things and see reality for what it is, that is. And I really didn't like how in the university, this is supposed to be a place where the best idea wins. And it turned into this emotional ideology where if you don't adhere to the emotional ideology, like you're a sexist or you're a racist. And I was called sexist and racist. You know, I was even threatened outside of classes. And, you know, I'm this, I'm that. You know, it never feels good until you just own it. Like, yeah, I'm a little sexist. Yeah, I'm a little racist. And it's not because I hate black people or Hispanics or whatever. It's just I like my race. I like white people. And I really don't, like, I don't think that it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. And that's something else that I genuinely think makes me spiritually attractive, is because I like who I am. I enjoy who I am. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I like white people and white people's culture for the most part, because of course there's some trashy ghetto yeah, just as much as any other race. But I don't think it's bad to be a little racist. And I don't mean that as like, because even just saying that word racist, it's like, oh, you're racist. It's like, no. I think that there are certain cultures that have certain standards and certain things that they do, and they happen to coincide because there's a stereotype for a reason. You know, it's not that I hate black. It's not like I hate anybody. It's just that I like white people because I'm white, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think anybody, whatever race you are, maybe it's time to be a little racist. Maybe it's time to be a little more sexist as well. Women think that being sexist, at least on the outside, is like this horrible thing. And yet I've never had more women want me than when I was sexist, and when I'm continuing to be more and more sexist by the day. And it's so strange, you know, it's so strange. But this is also something that you just do differently when you're actually spiritually attractive. We're going on a lot of different places. I hope you guys are keeping up and able to contextualize this with me, because I understand that sometimes I say things and people will have because it attacks the framework. It attacks what they believe to be true. And I'm not trying to force you to look at anything in a certain way. I'm looking at things from the macro level and describing it from a macro level in regard to what the details are in that macro level. So with all that being said, I think I said everything that I wanted to say in this video. The real thing that I want to hit home is that don't be afraid to be comfortable in your own skin. That's really what separates the spiritually attractive people from the non-spiritually attractive people. If you can be comfortable with your own skin, you don't try to be inflammatory for no reason. You know, you just are who you are, and you're not trying to force people into believing anything, because that's what I don't like. I don't like when people try to force me to be something. It's like, I want the freedom to make my own mistakes. That's what I want. When I was trapped in narcissistic relationships, all that I wanted was the freedom to make my own mistakes. And making those mistakes, I have. But guess what? They were my mistakes, and I learned from them. And thank God for that. Thank God that I'm able to carry that burden of light with him, because he's the one. I had a dream a while ago, and he was carrying me. Jesus Christ was carrying the cross, and I was on top of his shoulder carrying my own cross. So he's carrying the cross and me. that's where okay, Jesus Christ is the real deal. And it's just that simple. It's just that simple. And when you accept that fact, life just gets a little bit, it's not easier, but it's just simpler. It's just simple. And you don't have to be you don't have to be attached to everything. You don't have to be attached. You can just be. And I think that that's really, the creme de la creme of what I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope this video reaches all those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And with all that being said, stay blessed, stay mastered in your godlike savageness, and peace be with you. Until next time.